Friends, in the previous video, we learnt about pawnbrokers, what they do, where they do, what they sell, what they pawn, all these things we asked in the WH questions in the previous video. In this video, we are going to frame 12 more sets of the WH questions using the 9 WH questions, that is what, where, when, who, all these kinds of things. I'm going to write them on the board for you. Please observe carefully. You don't be worried about the technicalities of the meanings. Okay? We are just worried about the sentence which I'm going to use. Based upon that sentence, we are going to ask WH questions. And what questions I'm going to frame on the board, that is the correct way of asking WH questions. And the answers that I'm going to write on the board, that is the correct way of answering to those WH questions. So you need not worry about the technicalities. What you need to worry is to just follow those WH questions. And you try to make some more of your own based upon the examples that are given out there. I wish you all the best. Here it is, 12 sets of 12 sets of WH questions using what, when, where, then who, which, whose, whom, why, and how. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have 9 WH questions. Now we are going to take the verb leave. We are going to make a sentence using this verb. He leaves his kids. Now, based upon this sentence, we are going to frame 9 WH questions. First one is, what does he do? Now, answer to that, he leaves his kids. Now, if you write only this one, then it becomes abrupt. It becomes his different meaning. So I'm going to add, he leaves his kids in schools, in school. Okay. Next. Where does he leave his kids? He leaves his kids near the school. Next, third one. When does he leave his kids? Answer to that, he leaves his kids at 8:30 a.m. Fourth one, why does he leave his kids? Answer to that, he leaves his kids because they don't go by the school bus. Next, fifth one. Who leaves his kids? Let's take a name. Suresh leaves his kids. Sixth one. Whose kids does he leave? He leaves his kids and his neighbor's kids. Seventh one. With whom does he leave his kids? He leaves his kids alone. Eighth one. Which kids does he leave? He leaves the school going kids. Ninth one. How does he leave his kids? He leaves his kids in an auto rickshaw. So here, based upon this sentence, we have framed 9 WH questions. I told you before, don't worry about the technicalities of the questions. Some answers may be repeated once or twice. Okay, that is no problem, because we have to ask the question. We have to use all the WH questions. Sometimes they are similar to the others. Okay, now let's start from here. I'll just read it out for you once. Please listen carefully. What does he do? He leaves his kids in school. Where does he leave his kids? He leaves his kids near the school. When does he leave his kids? He leaves his kids at 8:30 a.m. Why does he leave his kids? He leaves his kids because they don't go by the school bus. Who leaves his kids? Suresh leaves his kids. Whose kids does he leave? He leaves his kids and his neighbor's kids. With whom does he leave his kids? He leaves his kids alone. Which kids does he leave? He leaves the school-going kids. How does he leave his kids? He leaves his kids in an auto rickshaw. That is the first set. Now let us go to the second set of questions. What did he do? He left his kids in school. Where did he leave his kids? He left his kids near the school. When did he leave his kids? He left his kids at 8:30 a.m. Why did he leave his kids? He left his kids because they didn't go by the school bus. Who left his kids? Suresh left his kids. Whose kids did he leave? He left his kids and his neighbor's kids. With whom did he leave his kids? He left his kids alone. Which kids did he leave? He left the school-going kids. How did he leave his kids? He left his kids in an auto rickshaw. Now we'll go to the third set. What will he do? He will leave his kids in school. Where will he leave his kids? He will leave his kids near the school. When will he leave his kids? He will leave his kids at 8:30 a.m. Why will he leave his kids? He will leave his kids because they don't go by the school bus. Who will leave his kids? Suresh will leave his kids. Whose kids will he leave? He will leave his kids and his neighbor's kids. With whom will he leave his kids? He will leave his kids alone. Which kids will he leave? He will leave the school-going kids. How will he leave his kids? He will leave his kids in an auto rickshaw. Now we are going to the fourth one. What is he doing? He is leaving his kids in school. Where is he leaving his kids? He is leaving his kids near the school. When is he leaving his kids? He is leaving his kids at 8:30 a.m. Why is he leaving his kids? He is leaving his kids because they don't go by the school bus. Who is leaving his kids? Suresh is leaving his kids. Whose kids is he leaving? He is leaving his kids and his neighbor's kids. With whom is he leaving his kids? He is leaving his kids alone. Which kids is he leaving? He is leaving the school-going kids. How is he leaving his kids? He is leaving his kids in an auto rickshaw. Now we are going to the fifth set. What was he doing? He was leaving his kids in school. Where was he leaving his kids? He was leaving his kids near the school. When was he leaving his kids? He was leaving his kids at 8:30 a.m. Why was he leaving his kids? He was leaving his kids because they don't go by the school bus. Who was leaving his kids? Suresh was leaving his kids. Whose kids was he leaving? He was leaving his kids and his neighbor's kids. With whom was he leaving his kids? He was leaving his kids alone. Which kids was he leaving? He was leaving his kids. He was leaving the school-going kids. How was he leaving his kids? He was leaving his kids in an auto rickshaw. Now we are going to the sixth one. What will he be doing? He will be leaving his kids. Where will he be leaving his kids? He will be leaving his kids near the school. When will he be leaving his kids? He will be leaving his kids at 8:30 a.m. Why will he be leaving his kids? He will be leaving his kids because they don't go by the school bus. Who will be leaving his kids? Suresh will be leaving his kids. Whose kids will he be leaving? He will be leaving his kids and his neighbor's kids. With whom will he be leaving his kids? He will be leaving his kids alone. Which kids will he be leaving? He will be leaving the school-going kids. How will he be leaving his kids? He will be leaving his kids in an auto rickshaw. Now that is the sixth one. Now we need to go to the seventh one. What has he done? He has left his kids in school. Where has he left his kids? He has left his kids near the school. When has he left his kids? He has left his kids at 8:30 a.m. Why has he left his kids? He has left his kids because they don't go by the school bus. Who has left his kids? Suresh has left his kids. Whose kids has he left? He left his kids and his neighbor's kids. With whom has he left his kids? He left his kids alone. Which kids has he left? He has left the school-going kids. How has he left his kids? He has left his kids in an auto rickshaw. Now we are going to the eighth one. What had he done? He had left his kids in school. Where had he left his kids? He had left his kids near the school. When had he left his kids? He had left his kids at 8:30 a.m. Why had he left his kids? He had left his kids because they don't go by the school bus. Who had left his kids? Suresh had left his kids. Whose kids had he left? He left his kids and his neighbor's kids. With whom had he left his kids? He had left his kids alone. Which kids had he left? he had left the school-going kids. How had he left his kids? He had left his kids in an auto rickshaw. Now we are going to the ninth one. What will he have done? He will have left his kids. Where will he have left his kids? He will have left his kids near the school. When will he have left his kids? He will have left his kids at 8:30 a.m. Why will he have left his kids? He will have left his kids because they don't go by the school bus. Who will have left his kids? Suresh will have left his kids. Whose kids will he have left? He will have left his kids and his neighbor's kids. With whom will he have left his kids? He will have left his kids alone. Which kids will he have left? He will have left the school-going kids. How will he have left his kids? He will have left his kids in an auto rickshaw. Now we are going to the 6th, 8th, 7th. We are going to the 10th one. What has he been doing? He has been leaving his kids in school. Where has he been leaving his kids? He has been leaving his kids near the school. When has he been leaving his kids? He has been leaving his kids at 8:30 a.m. Why has he been leaving his kids? He has been leaving his kids because they don't go by the school bus. Who has been leaving his kids? Suresh has been leaving his kids. Whose kids has he been leaving? He has been leaving his kids and his neighbor's kids. With whom has he been leaving his kids? He has been leaving his kids alone. Which kids has he been leaving? He has been leaving the school-going kids. How has he been leaving his kids? He has been leaving his kids in an auto rickshaw. Now we are going to the 11th one. What had he been doing? He had been leaving his kids in school. Where had he been leaving his kids? He had been leaving his kids near the school. When had he been leaving his kids? He had been leaving his kids at 8:30 a.m. Why had he been leaving his kids? He had been leaving his kids because they don't go by the school bus. Who had been leaving his kids? Suresh had been leaving his kids. Whose kids had he been leaving? He had been leaving his kids and his neighbor's kids. With whom had he been leaving his kids? He had been leaving his kids alone. Which kids had he been leaving? He had been leaving the school-going kids. How had he been leaving his kids? He had been leaving his kids in an auto rickshaw. Now we are going to the final set. What will he have been doing? He will have been leaving his kids. Where will he have been leaving his kids? He will have been leaving his kids near the school. When will he have been leaving his kids? He will have been leaving his kids at 8:30 a.m. Why will he have been leaving his kids? He will have been leaving his kids because they don't go by the school bus. Who will have been leaving the kids? Mr. Suresh will have been leaving the kids. Whose kids will he have been leaving? He will have been leaving his kids and his neighbor's kids. With whom will he have been leaving his kids? He will have been leaving his kids alone. Which kids will he have been leaving? He will have been leaving the school-going kids. How will he have been leaving his kids? He will have been leaving his kids in an auto rickshaw. So here we have completed the 12 sets. When you practice these 12 sets, it's going to be easy for you to ask questions in any tense, in any manner, in any situation. So you have all these things: what, where, when, why, who, whose, whom, which, how. So based upon this, you can ask different questions. You can, in any situation, based upon the sentence or the thought that you are thinking about. So what I want you to do is to please learn framing these WH questions correctly and answering to those WH questions correctly. I wish you all the best. In my next video, I'm going to frame 12 more sets using these 9 WH questions.